1940s, suburban fears were not touched upon in film. Early suburbia was an escape from the horrors of the world. What was scary was out there. It would be an unpublished outline by Gordon MacDonald called Uncle Charlie, and a partnership between Jack Skirball of Universal Pictures and Alfred Hitchcock that would bring suburban fears to the silver screen. Shadow of a Doubt tells a story that resonated with many, and continues to do so to this day. The film follows Uncle Charlie, the apple of his older sister's eye, and the hero of his namesake niece. Unbeknownst to them, he is a serial killer on the run, and when he receives a telegram from his niece Charlie, he decides to return to Santa Rosa for a visit. Soon, the once carefully constructed image begins to fade, and young Charlie begins to see the wolf beneath sheep's clothing. Shadow of a Doubt asks the question, how much do we ever really know anyone? Hello and welcome to the Quiet Riot, where we talk film, television, and media with an emphasis on old movies and nostalgic favorites. I'm Ainsley, and in today's video, we're talking Hitchcock, baby. Yes, that's right. We are talking the master of suspense, one of my personal favorite genres, and I am happy to talk about one of my favorite films that also has to be one of Hitchcock's favorites of his own work, and that is Shadow of a Doubt. Shadow of a Doubt was made in the early 1940s, in 1943, and it's quite different than what Hitchcock had done up until this point, but it is also pretty far removed from a lot of his other work, though there are a lot of Hitchcockian staples, which is pretty Hitchcock, I would say. He definitely managed to spread his wings a little bit, but there was always his own little signatures, and of course that's why we have things called a Hitchcockian thriller, or it's Hitchcockian. So today we are going to talk about Shadow of a Doubt and its place in the great filmography of Alfred Hitchcock, some behind the scenes, some spoiler-free talk, and then we'll do a little breakdown. Uncle Charlie is already contemplating his next move when he receives a telegram from young Charlie in Santa Rosa, California, a small suburban community an hour north of San Francisco. Young Charlie loves and looks up to her uncle, but unbeknownst to her and the rest of the family, Uncle Charlie is a nihilistic, misogynistic serial killer who moves in on wealthy widows. Hitchcock cast the charming Joseph Cotten against type. In his interview with Francois Truffaut on Shadow, first published in 1967, Alfred Hitchcock said the dense black smoke belching from the train that brings Charles Oakley to Santa Rosa was a deliberate symbol of imminent evil. Alfred Hitchcock used the idea of you destroy the thing you love in this movie. In an interview with Peter Bogdanovich, Hitchcock mentioned the idea of you destroy the thing you love through Oscar Wilde. Young Charlie loved Uncle Charlie, but she ended up destroying him at the end of the movie. In the interview with Francois Truffaut, Hitchcock mentioned that it is implied at the ending the young Charlie will be in love with her Uncle Charlie for the rest of her life. So who is Uncle Charlie? We first meet Uncle Charlie. He is in a New Jersey apartment, staring out the window at two cops who are following him. He then receives a telegram from his niece telling him of her boredom in Santa Rosa. He uses this as an opportunity to head to California to visit family. Charlie is the younger brother who's doted upon by his older sister, and she treats him more like a son. His oldest niece and namesake Charlie looks up to her uncle and longs to live the life he has fabricated. Charming and handsome, Uncle Charlie uses this to his advantage to seduce older women so that he can inherit the fortune after he kills them. The audience is informed of the type of man Charlie is, but to his family remains a charming and successful man with ambition. In the eyes of those who love him, he's done nothing wrong. They don't know this different side of who he is. He also uses his charms to manipulate his family and painting this image of who they want him to be and the person they would dote upon and look upon. And he manipulates young Charlie in a way as one might do to a romantic interest or lover. Charlie Oakley is the bomb beneath the table that we the audience know about, but the characters in the film do not. When he comes into Santa Rosa, his niece and sister are surprised but happy to see him. As the time passes and the police get closer, Charlie begins to unravel, and the mask starts to come off. Charlie's sister mentions that he had an accident on a bicycle when he was a young boy. Earl Nelson, the serial killer on whom this story is loosely based, suffered from extremely serious mental illness, which, along with his history of occipital headaches, was attributed to the near-fatal bicycle accident in his childhood, in which he was seriously struck on the back of the head. Charlie's sister mentions how his personality had changed after the accident, getting into mischief, which is what happened with Nelson, who soon began to commit burglaries. Before leaving for the West Coast, Charlie leaves his room and turns to follow his landlady. It is inferred that she would never be seen again. The real-life serial killer Earl Nelson, whose activities inspired this film, had a penchant for killing landladies and molesting them afterwards. While at the dinner table, Charles quotes from the Bible. The serial killer Earl Nelson did frequently quote the Bible as well. Book, Dracula, and vampires are never mentioned in this film, but there are still many allusions to Bram Stoker's famous novel. Charlie takes on the role of stalking. He is the Dracula to young Charlie's Mina, and this further puts their relationship into this romantic light. The connection between the pair is almost subliminal in a way, and in the first time that we see both of these characters, they are in a similar position, stiff on a bed, laying almost like a person in a coffin. Charlie is a stranger, and there are visuals of characters' necks, particularly that of young Charlie. Moments of coercion similar to a Dracula type. Charlie is a living, breathing man, but the evil he carries inside himself is the stuff of nightmares. Duality is a common motif in Hitchcock films, and this can be seen in The Lodger and later in Strangers on a Train, and other films directed by Hitchcock. In Shadow of a Doubt, the most obvious use of the motif is the two Charlies, young Charlie and the uncle she was named after. In the film, young Charlie mentions to her uncle that they are like twins. In fact, the Charlies are closer than most uncles and their nieces. At times, the relationship seems almost romantic in nature. He gives her a ring, a trophy from one of his widows, and Charlie forgot to get the engraved initials on the ring removed. When Charlie is on to her uncle and things start to go south, the follows her and takes her into a bar. At the beginning of the film, we see both Charlies laying in the same position in the bed, and this was an intentional act from Hitchcock to play on the similarities between the two. They're two sides of the same coin, so to speak. The dark and the light, the good and the bad. When Charlie first comes to Santa Rosa, he still sees his niece as the light in a dark world, a world that he sees as a filthy sty. As the film progresses and Charlie begins to slip, young Charlie begins to see her uncle for who he really is, and she becomes his next target. I'm going to share with you a few more pieces of trivia about the film. Shadow of a Doubt was a box office failure upon its release, but a critical success. Those involved with the film, including the director, love the movie. Now, just because a movie is not a even critical success or a financial success at the time of its release doesn't mean that it's not going to go on to be a much more successful movie with a lot of love and praise. Think John Carpenter's The Thing, and we also had The Night of the Hunter. Those were two amazing films as well as this, but did not receive the same love from audiences that it ends up doing so later, though the film was much more of a critical success at the time of its release. Originally, Hitchcock wanted William Powell for the role of Uncle Charlie, but Universal Pictures was unable to borrow him. Cary Grant was considered, but the role eventually went to Joseph Cotten, who was known for his roles as the nice guy. I had mentioned this before, but I want to mention again, because I had actually, I think this may have been maybe not my first thing seeing him in, but it was definitely at least my second. And so I didn't necessarily have that same point of view as someone who would have seen this film for the first time back in the day or earlier on when it was out. But he does have this very kind of boy next door. I definitely see him as the brother that would be doted upon, and so you can see him in a light similar to how the sister sees him in the movie, but of course we as the audience know that there is something sinister that lurks in Uncle Charlie. When Charlie first enters his sister's house, he is shown to his room and about to throw his hat on the bed, when his sister's husband stops him. This is an oblique reference to the old superstition that throwing a cowboy's hat on a bed can lead to bad luck. Joan Fontaine and Olivia de Havilland, those two happen to be sisters, were both considered for the role of young Charlie, but were busy at the time of filming. Joan Fontaine had actually played the second Mrs. De Winter in Hitchcock's Rebecca. And while I can understand why Joan Fontaine would have been a choice for Hitchcock, she does have this kind of very sweet disposition and innocent face, as you can see in Rebecca. I do think she may have been a little bit too old for the role at this time, and it just seems that it was meant for Therese Ray. The waltz in the underscoring is Franz Lehár's Merry Widow Waltz, in reference to the press nickname for the story's killer. The song was written for The Merry Widow, a musical play that debuted in 1907. Based on an 1861 play in which various would-be matchmakers try to find a suitor for a wealthy widow, with the intent that the marriage keeps the money in the country so that the vying matchmakers could profit from it. Uncle Charlie is actually connected to all three children in some way. For instance, Uncle Charlie is closest to young Charlie, and like Anne, Uncle Charlie was always reading when he was young, and like Roger, Uncle Charlie is the youngest in the family. There are several references in Shadow of a Doubt about the number 2. There is, of course, the two Charlies, which is the most prominent one, and we also have the bar scene. The bar Uncle Charlie takes Charlie to is named Till 2. On the double doors there are 2 painted clocks showing the time as 2 to 2, and the waitress has worked there 2 weeks. Uncle Charlie also orders 2 double brandies. Uncle Charlie represents the evil encroaching in on our daily lives. He is the wolf in sheep's clothing. And even worse, he is the man we think we know, but really know nothing about at all. Even when we think the greatest threat to us is on the outside. Maybe the evil is close by, and this evil is visiting family in Santa Rosa, California. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to watch my video. I really do appreciate it. And if you would like to show some support for me and the Quiet Riot, why don't you give this video a like, if you liked it of course, and subscribe and ring that bell to be notified every single time I post if you would like to stick around. If you've seen Shadow of a Doubt, I would love to know your personal thoughts on it, and if you have anything else to add, let me know in the comments below. Where you can rent or purchase the film, or any articles that I may have read prior to this, will be linked in the description box below. In our next video, we will be discussing The Last of Sheila, and until next time, bye!